Hi, I'm Renee Devereaux, and I welcome you to the Club for Creative Expression and the show, Brain and Body Regeneration. Today, I have the privilege of introducing my guest, Stephen Dole, and he is an experiential neuroscientist working in both Western and integrative medicine, in neurodiagnostics, cognitive and movement disorders, drumming, and music therapy. I'm very pleased to have him here because he can speak about neurological disorders, because that's his expertise, sensory and processing disorders. He also writes about brain health, of course, music and the brain, aging, and addiction. So Stephen puts on therapeutic drum circles for senior wellness, Parkinson's disease, movement and balance disorders, and addiction. So, Stephen, a warm welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. No, my pleasure. And so, one of the more pertinent questions, because a lot of work is being done with music therapy, how did you get to that? Because I know that you are a neuroscientist and you had done some work in that field, a nuclear medicine technologist. I mean, that's what I have written here, where you developed skills including medical intuition. But I believe that it sort of broke through when you had an accident, correct?
Yes.
And you developed hydrocephalus?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about how that impacted your brain.
So that was in 1992.
Okay.
So that was a car accident where I suffered a concussion. And then over the following month, I developed neurological symptoms that just got worse and worse and worse.
Can you tell us a little bit about the symptoms? What did that seem or look like?
Hydrocephalus is water on the brain. So you're always you make about 20 or 25 cc's of brain fluid every hour.
Wow.
And for any number of disorders, and it's real common in children, like a birth defect. And then you won't be able to clear all that fluid. And so the fluid will build up. And then what medicine is still doing today, mostly, is they go in and they put a shunt. They make an opening in the brain and they put a shunt with a tube and they drain it typically into the abdomen.
But how did it demonstrate in you? Was it speech? Was it?
It was, you know what, it was sort of a funny story. I don't get off too much of it. It was when things had really started getting bad. I was still working, and but I was having some difficulty working. And then one of the people in nuclear medicine, one of the hospitals, they said, you should get a brain scan. And you know, being a guy, oh yeah, right. So I didn't want to acknowledge that something was going on.
I see.
And so that was on a Friday, and then it was a Sunday. I had some friends of mine asked me to go play golf. And I thought, I don't think I should play golf. Something's not right. I really am having a hard time. So I did go out with them, and I kept losing my balls, and I think I had one beer, and then they had been drinking more, and they wanted me to drive this guy's van. There was 5 or 6 of us. I didn't know what side of the street to drive on. I didn't know what stop signs meant. It's just in a matter of a day, and I guess maybe the activity of being on the golf course. And so I was really confused.
So confusion.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And you know, you see it in seniors. So in seniors, it's typically called normal pressure hydrocephalus, or NPH.
Okay. Okay.
And you'll see cognitive difficulties. You'll see gait, walking difficulties, and then sometimes with controlling the bladder.
So would you say that it's like pre-dementia, or one can lead to the other?
Well, you know, there's been a lot of confusion and misdiagnosis over the years, because oftentimes they would put a shunt in a senior who in fact didn't have hydrocephalus. They really had dementia. And then they went through all these surgeries and they didn't get any better. Now they got a shunt.
Oh, I see. Oh.
So they've gotten better in the last 10 to 20 years on selecting the patients for that. And then I also do consults for families. I became an expert on this in the last 20 years.
Right, no, definitely. I'm aware of your skills in that
area. And so it's gotten much better as far as selecting the right patient, making sure if they're going to put a shunt in that the person's going to benefit from it.
I see. And so please tell me, at what point did you make the connection that music would be of benefit to you? How did you discover that?
Well, you know, so I grew up playing music, and I performed and I toured as a vocalist. And so after my initial surgeries, and they had put me on disability, and things didn't look too good. And I thought, well, you know, the idea of playing music for therapy is for peace of mind. And so I did not have a piano or keyboard at the time, so I bought a keyboard and I started playing keyboard again. And then I had a guitar and I started learning guitar. And my son, we got him a guitar, so he started playing guitar. And so I was doing that, and then that was what I did for the first few years after my injury.
Okay.
And it was good because it gave me some peace of mind, some sort of place, you know, times I didn't feel well. That
so it diminished your stress level, would you say?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
That's a start.
And a lot of social things. I met people, I took classes at Orange Coast College, so I met people who were doing that too. And it was really a great experience those first few years. But at the same time, I started doing the neuroscience work. So I was living sort of two different lives, and I was doing, you know, the music, which was just enjoyment at that time. And then I was doing this really technical neuroscience. I was doing some advocacy with the FDA, and I was getting really involved. And I ended up designing and patenting this monitoring system while I was still doing the music for just fun.
Your own pleasure.
Yeah. And then it was, I'd say by maybe 1998, 99, I started doing some research with music now. And then it was a couple of years later, I got involved in drumming, and then I was able to apply a lot of that research, and all these things, sort of tangents of my neuroscience work, started coming together.
Okay, and so can you identify for us it's like the first noticeable difference that you might have, that it made for you in my
thinking, daily life?
Exactly.
I'd say confidence.
Confidence.
Because it gives you something to work on, especially music when you're playing and you're performing with other people and you're performing in front of people. That really helps the confidence. And so if you look at speaking, which a lot of us do, you know, speaking with our friends or in groups, or, you know, sometimes you're doing some activity where you're asked to sort of get up and introduce people or lead something. So it really helped with that. And then it was in 2004 that I got involved in drumming.
Okay. And so you also had mentioned about the evolution of your intuition. I mean, I think you started there. I mean, you had some initial skill there, but it has evolved. Now, do you attribute it to the music, or what came first?
Well, so you know, I obviously had some of these abilities growing up, and then the first time I really knew that I was doing something that was unusual was when I was 16, and I would at times know things that I didn't ordinarily know.
Okay.
And we can be in discussions with friends, and sometimes I was just so insightful on science and different things. It was really quite amazing. People come up to me later and say, wow, that's really, I said, I'm not that smart. I don't know how I knew those things.
Okay.
And so that's when it first began. And then, so I started college in pre-med, and I did it for a year or so. And I just wasn't interested in going on and becoming a doctor. So in my personal time, I started reading all these different books on all these things with the mind. And so I was doing things, technically, arguably in the neurosciences, years before any of this really happened. And it was the brain injury in 1992.
Okay.
That really gave me the opportunity that if I wanted to have any quality of life, I'm going to have to get much more involved in this, in the healthcare of it, and the neuroscience of these shunts that are used in hydrocephalus. Things had been neglected in the field, and they were years behind. So I ended up getting very involved in all that, initially with the shunt devices, and then eventually more with music, and then with once I started doing the drumming, it's like I knew there was something here. And it was one of those moments you just, wow.
Do you feel that it enhanced your intuitive abilities?
Yes, because when you're playing drumming or free form, it's like, you know, when people write music, it's just really creative. And obviously you have a structure to your craft, but when you're actually doing it, it's very free form. And so you're using the intuitive, you're using the creative.
And that's the magic word, creative.
Yes.
All right.
And so as we talked about earlier, I think in the past week, you have to have a method and structure. If you're going to be great at your craft, every craft has structure, has a formula of how you do it. So once you set that as the foundation, you get that going, and it's the creativity and that trust. You've got the confidence that you know the structure, so that's good. And now you just let yourself go. And the creativity emerges from that.
Yes. Because I see it in dance, and this is why, you know, it's a club for creative expression, yet we do a lot of events involving dancing, and of course now I want to bring in more music.
Yes.
Because I do feel that that sort of sets the pattern, the mode, to have the person develop their creative
and so you
spark.
know the magic really happens, and you hear this all the time, when you let go.
When you let go, when you
let
relax.
Go.
Okay.
And so if you've done the homework and you have the structure and you know everything that you're doing, you get to that point, you just let go. And so when you're in a group setting, which typically drumming is in music, especially the drumming, you're playing off of the other people. And so that gets into the neuroscience of what we call brainwave entrainment.
Okay, and so does that mean that something else is being accessed in the subconscious rather than the conscious mind? You see, I'm a hypnotherapist, so I do want to access the person's subconscious mind, because oftentimes that conscious mind is in the way.
Yeah.
And so when you speak about letting go, the person is actually accessing a different part of themselves. Is that correct? Is that
well,
what I'm
and so
hearing?
a little more technically, so we have 4 or 5 different brainwave states. You've got the the alpha, the beta, the gamma, the delta, and so oftentimes you'll hear people being on the same page, the connectedness. So in order to have that connectedness, you have to be in a similar brainwave state pattern. And so brainwave entrainment is when you do an activity, a group activity, and after 5 to 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, everybody in the group, your brainwaves start copying each other, and you get what's called a group effect. And it's interesting. Oftentimes people say, well, who determines that?
Yes.
You don't want to have a leader per se. It's just, and I'll tell you the way it works is, in human nature, we're attracted to things that are special and unique. So if somebody is playing a particular pattern that is really cool, the group will go, wow, they will want to be part of it. They want to be around it. And then the other participants will come in and start playing around it. And so that's sort of, at any given time, anybody can be the star.
Okay. All right. Just depending on the rhythm that...
And so you want those dynamics to be available. And I've been involved in drum circles I'm putting on, and sometimes the people that you would least expect, that are so shy or whatever, and they just get really involved and they get inspired, and next thing you know, they start playing these really cool parts, and the rest of the group goes, wow, and they all start playing with it, and next you've got this whole orchestra of sound.
Isn't that wonderful? And I see that you brought several different instruments here.
Yes.
And of course, this one is I don't know why, it's particularly fascinating to me, because it has such a unique sound and it's a vibration.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about vibration and how that can impact? Because
so with the drumming, of the things that you get, so you get the individual expression that you're doing that you don't have to put words to. You do with your body was what we call thought intent. Then you get the brainwave entrainment of playing with the other people in your group. Then you get the effects of the instruments. So these all vibrate, especially the drums.
The
people
drums,
that love the drums, but even that has a vibration to it.
It does.
Or this does.
Well, that I can definitely hear. This one, though, it feels very vibrational to me. So what is the the benefit of this, because there is a sound.
Yes. So you're hearing it and feeling it. Mm-hmm. And so that vibration then affects your body and affects your brain.
I see. So can you demonstrate what that might sound like in a...
So on this is what we call a sound shape. So these are sort of the, like the salad dressings, so to speak, that we would put.
Sort of enhancements.
Yes. And so typically, you're going to have one of these hand drums, and and then some sort of pattern will start between the drums. Like I could have you play the drum there, and just start playing a pattern that seems comfortable.
Oh,
what if you did something like? So start from the outside, go.
I'm a novice.
Yeah. And keep playing that. Keep playing that. We're going to get to this one, then you come in. And we're doing this just the two of us.
Exactly. Oh, it's so much more fun when you have several people with a different instrument. Yeah. So, the benefits are incredible. And of course you have the fun, the social interaction, which I know people love. And even I'm totally a novice with this, and I think I'd like to participate in more drum circles. I know there is one regularly here in the village.
Okay.
And we've talked about having you do a workshop at some point, in the coming year. I think it would be really great. The focus that, of course, I want to maintain is the benefit that I really want people to understand how it impacts your brain health. There's a lot of people here that are concerned because they're forgetting things. They forget their keys, they forget where they park the car, any number of things. And so a lot of people assume that this is natural because we're getting older. And I say, no, we need to do something. We need to take responsibility for our mental health.
Yeah.
And so if this is one way, I feel that that's extraordinary.
And I can tell you, so I had a chance to go through when I was 37 with this accident and all these surgeries. I mean, it was like being 80 years old overnight. Mm-hmm. And so, out of survival, I started doing all these different things. And what I've learned, and I've written some, I'm really working on a book. It's taken me a while to do this. But the instruments, because they're different, the way you play them, and so they each offer some particular benefits to you. And so the drum in particular here, because typically you're playing what we call a downbeat. And that beat is so specific that when we move around, when we walk, we generally kind of have sort of a swagger or a pivot foot for our balance. And so it gives you a very specific timing pattern for
like
movement.
Like a grounding.
A grounding, a very, very specific. It's interesting, you know, we remember rhythmic patterns as part of our body, the way we move.
Yes.
And when we're young children, we you know, learn to walk, and we do those things. And then, you know, growing up, we play sports. We do all those things that are very rhythmic, and we have a tremendous sense of timing with rhythm. And so that's why they use it. They use it after brain injuries today. It's so great in so many therapies for movement, especially. And then, so then when you get into things like the shaker, this is kind of more for the feet. Now I have another one where I use two of them. And so this would be like the pivot. So this would be like the basic movement.
Okay.
And this gets into really moving around.
Oh.
So you're more of awareness of time and space. That's what that is for. Now the bell is similar to the clave, which when we do all the music, you have all these specific time structures. So if I did, like on the bell, if I did a 3/2 clave, it would be. And again, that is a very specific pattern. This kind of starts it, the downbeat on the bass, but it's these patterns that really give you a sense of when you're moving around, of being exactly right on. That's why I've written applications for football and basketball. I've actually been in workshops with some of these top drummers from Africa. And when I was with them, these people, generations have grown up doing this. And my intuitive, this was a couple of years ago, I was in this workshop with this guy, and I felt this is where the football patterns, on the football field, the guys that can do these great patterns, the receivers and the running backs, where do you think that comes from? It comes from years and years and years of these drumming, these African patterns that are very, very specific patterns.
That's
so when I was with him in this room, he was playing, we're doing this, I could like I could feel it, visualize, this is the movements they use on a football field.
So my question would be, in your drumming circles, do you have people move around, or are they basically seated?
And so typically, okay, so for the drums, you're going to be sitting down. Now some people, we can put straps on and stand, but typically you're going to be sitting down. This I love, you're going to be up and moving with the shakers. With the shakers and the bell. And what you're going to do when you're playing these, even this, when you're playing these, you're going to be timing your feet as you're moving and sort of dancing.
Okay.
So
so it's not just a matter of sitting there and...
No. And the same thing now with sports. If you hear people talk about sports, it is all about footwork. All about footwork. Quarterbacks, tennis, it's about footwork and a rhythmic progression. You're coordinating your body, but it's about your feet better have the correct timing. And so when we do this, maybe we can do a drum circle sometime, you can see it's about coordinating the footwork with the body. And when you do that, that's where your balance comes in. Because as you get older and you start having balance problems, you lose some of the sensory things in the feet. Then you also have the eyes that are part of it. You have the middle ear and then the center of the brain. And so you can strengthen these mechanisms, especially the feet, by working on these patterns.
Well, that's fascinating, and I really like that aspect, because I've attended a drumming circle once in a while, I mean maybe twice in my life, and they've been stationary. So I like this element of bringing in the movement again, because
and then
I dance.
You teach dance, or I know you teach a class.
Yes.
It's based on that, which is exactly what you want to be doing.
Exactly. So I need to bring in some drumming music for my balance classes.
And as I talk about, so I've written about, and I've done workshops for seniors in balance, and it's similar to what I write. I've got a huge blog on basketball, the brain science of basketball, and I talk about where does a shot come from. It comes from a rhythmic progression.
Oh, Stephen, you're so full of information. I'm really delighted to have you as my guest. We've had you before, and I had so many phone calls about your work, and because again, people are concerned about the brain health, and because you've experienced a personal experience in brain injury, and how you have recovered, and music has been a therapeutic tool. It's not just fun anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
But definitely therapeutic.
And then I mentioned when we were talking on the phone the other day, the rhythmic progression is what you use when you're cooking in the kitchen.
Yes.
Doing for a big party, when you're doing all these different things, it's just, you're multitasking, right? When you're driving a car, you're multitasking again. And so much of we do is using those what I call progressions, and you get into a pattern, and then your body movements, they help you think, they help you focus. And it takes pressure off of you trying to remember everything, because you think about when you're doing sports, once you start doing it, or like dance, once you start doing it, you don't have to think.
Exactly.
It just takes off.
It becomes an automatic. There's a body memory. And
that's where you want to go.
Yeah. So again, I thank you so much for being here. And if you have any questions, please call me. I'd love to direct you to consultation, or maybe create a very different type of drumming circle. I think that would be fun. So again, I thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again.